I wanted to do a quick start guide to Awakening Tamer in PvP for you today. And first things first, I am going to try and go over the skills I think cause the most confusion when people are trying to learn the class. We're known as the cancel class, we're known for our grab, we're known for our iframes. So let's get into the things that we are known for and try and deconstruct them a little bit so that you have those core building blocks you're going to need to understand the rest of the kit and to improve your skills on Tamer. So let's get right into it. We're going to go into interface settings, action hotkeys, down here to WW evasion. Bind that to a key on your mouse. You can see everything I'm doing on my mouse and keyboard right here in this extended display. That is going to give you access to the forward evasion WW skill, which is a cancel that will cancel you out of just about anything at any time in your entire kit. And the other cancel out of just about anything at any time in the entire kit is your other main movement skill, Shift+Space for legendary beast power. That's the glue that holds Tamer together, is your no cooldown iframe SA WW and your 1.5 second cooldown SA dash legendary beast power. Make sure with legendary beast power that mechanically you are doing Shift+Space. Even as tight as that looks, almost like I'm pressing it at the same time, if I do space shift first, I'm gonna jump of shame and die just like that. That was a great timing by Sheepsy. We didn't even plan that out. And be conscious that the icon disappears as you slow down, and that means you are not protected. So mechanically, you always want to be canceling the end of that animation with something. Evasion is a good option, or some of your other movement skills, like Moonlight Strike, or Skyreach, or Cloud Stomping. Moonlight Strike you can use either with the forward F input in Awakening, or if you're in pre-Awakening you can use the Hotkey. And it also flows smoothly after Tree Climb. So if Tree Climb is on cooldown, because it has the same input as Moonlight Strike, then you're going to do Moonlight Strike from pre-Awakening, but only when this is on cooldown. Your Leaves dropping and your Gust. Leaves dropping and Gust both buff you with a little bit of magic AP. Gust gives you more and doesn't consume stamina, and it gives you 6 more magic AP, with Leaves not overriding the 16 and instead giving you 10 when it's used while the Gust buff is down. Okay, so those two iframes also have a little bit of a linger there at the end if you touch nothing. But that linger disappears if you hold your movement keys. So you got to be light with your fingers when you're using these if you want to have that extra little second of linger. The other iframe that you need to know about, because you can use it at any time from hotbar, is Dark Gaoler. So you bind that to a key. I've got it on the G key here. And you can use that after your Awakening iframe and then combo out of it with another iframe before the frontal guard section goes off. So right there, as I'm about to Kamehameha, alright, you can cancel out of that with another iframe. But if you wait too long, then you're going to get the Kamehameha and you will have that forward guard opening, which people are going to be aware of. Okay, so that's the whirlwind tour of the movement. But each of those skills, alright, has a lot of nuance to them. Alright, and this is really what makes Tamer seem hard, let's say, is that there's actually a lot of details to each of those skills where you want to know how you can flow into and out of them and what your different options are for manipulating them. And they are many, but they're not that complicated. So forward evasion has a number of cancels that cancel the top of it just as you're going into SA. It's got Leaf Slash, it's got Scratch, it's got Air Lightning, it's got Tree Climb. Alright, and there's a reason that you would use all of those different ones. Leaf Slash being the option into your Shift+Space legendary beast power that simply costs you no cooldowns whatsoever and is a little bit snappier if you're changing directions versus letting your feet hit the ground. Okay, so you see that those few frames there where my feet have to hit the ground before legendary beast power can activate. Alright, you don't pay that price if you use the snappier LMB cancel. And you can do that with any of the other cancels as well, okay, as a change of direction. So if you cannot afford that single frame of Leaf Slash being unprotected, which because of desync may end up being a larger gap than a single frame, then sometimes you will actually just use the protection, even though these two skills have offensive utility as well, so you do not want to waste them. Okay, so the offensive utility of those two skills are, number one, going through forward guard and stiffening with that scratch. And as I mentioned, you can just keep running with the scratch, so it can do the stiff instantly, and then you can just keep running and check if it landed, whether you got to go back and start a combo. So Air Lightning, same feature, you can just keep running, you're protected, and it will drop the Doggo Trap, which the last hit of that has a guaranteed chance to stiff. The rest of the hits have an RNG chance to stiff. So you want to watch that animation after you drop that and see if there's something you can come back and capitalize on. Okay, especially that last hit there. However, this is the main reason you use it. Attack and cast speed debuff of 20% for 10 seconds. So just headbutting people with that while on the run is going to drop the trap, you'll stay protected, and you can debuff them. You can also cancel it with Tree Climb. Tree Climb is a huge forward leaping iframe that doesn't collide with the target anymore. It used to, causing potential death. You had to be a little bit more aware of your mechanics. Now you don't. You can just use the forward F input, totally smooth iframe, leaps you forward pretty far. But the more refined way to use Tree Climb is to know that if you forward evade through a target and then hold F, you're going to get Tree Climb, and you manage to no collide and get some distance between you and that target. Let's say you're trying to use it to disengage. The other thing that you should really know about is that you can use it to get behind frontals, just like that, and you can combine those two actions to disengage through somebody. Target switching can be very effective in PvP. Use Tree Climb and then catch that person in the back behind their frontal. I want to add one more aspect to this. If you leave/cancel and you're very light on your fingers, then you can actually use a number of skills instantly after that legendary beast power. Okay, so the last thing to cover with forward evasion is going to be dropping a Surging Tide on the run. So at any point in your forward evasion or your Shift+Space, you can turn around and drop a Surging Tide, which if used off of cooldown is going to be a forward guard. And the reason this is the favorite defensive tool as you're on the run, you want to block incoming damage and slows, is because it has a CC attached to it of a knockback. Anyone caught in that line is going to be knocked back. The dog is going to do a follow-up trap. He's going to be in front of you for a bit of body block as well for people charging in or ranged attacks that are projectile based. And even if nobody gets hit by that line, at range, if you're there in the reticle, then he will do this ranged attack that has 8 attempts to stiffen them, as opposed to the 14 of the swirly attack that he does. So those 8 attempts will actually follow them around as they move, and it's a way to just kind of watch out for a CC that you might get lucky and then be able to come in and capitalize on it and turn the tables on the enemy. So that's the most utility you can get by just turning around and wanting to block some incoming damage, but you also have options like C-swap, you also have options like throat burn, you also have options like using a bolt cancel into Gaoler. The way that works is the leaf slash into legendary beast power into bolt wave, which has cancels such as the cancel into the damage of Dark Gaoler, skipping the iframe. And there's another option for that bolt cancel, which is if your throat burn is on cooldown, you'll do Allround Spinner. The reason Allround Spinner is a really good forward guard, it's more of a defensive skill, I would say, these days than anything else, unless you're using it for the very powerful 100%, which we'll go over later. The reason it's so good defensively is because you can spin it around with the camera, and that flow, I would recommend saving that flow, in fact, and not using it. So watch your timing with this. When the skill ends, do not have your finger on RMB, because this skill, Soaring Strike, the flow, you want to use by itself from hotbar. That is a great combo tool and does some very good damage for you. So what else do you have available to you when it comes to movement? First of all, your SF input, Cloud Stomping, is a great way to traverse up terrain because it will hug elevation as you go up, and you can definitely exploit that when you are trying to move up slopes. The one for descending that makes the most sense is Skyreach, which will travel fairly far in that arc and has this very long SA linger on the landing, and a number of other ways to cancel that landing into some smooth movement. If you want to dash a bit further, go for a grab. Also, you can use forward evasion to cancel, and then you can use any of the forward evasion cancels. including tree climb. Also, Trample swap, if you add that LMB input to drop yourself just before you hit the ground naturally. You do have to time that, especially if you want it to be snappy and give you any kind of advantage. You can also get it to change directions twice, kind of do a zigzag in the air by clicking the mouse movement and then unclicking the mouse movement, so like that. For cloud stomping, it has this windup, and you can cancel that windup in a number of ways. One of those ways being Moonlight Strike, which is another SA dash movement that you should be aware of. This one recovers stamina and does not use it. It's a way to get into a number of important engages. It flows nicely into grab. It flows nicely out of both Skyreach, as I demonstrated, and also cloud stomping if we just wait for cooldown to expire by holding it. Skyreach actually does a lot of damage on the landing. You're probably not going to be able to exploit that, to be completely honest. You're going to use it for the movement or for this iframe to counter engage. Know about that. Also know about cloud stomping's damage, because it has this all accuracy plus 15% for 3 seconds, which you can use to evasion bust because it stacks with our other all accuracy plus 15% buff, which is longer lasting and is more typically the one that you're going for when you're doing a standard combo. And you'll also want to be using Moonlight Strike from Hotbar, and that is mainly so that you can, out of pre-awakening, preserve your tree climb cooldown and still use your Moonlight Strike even in Awakening, simply because using the W and F input can be inconvenient depending on what other inputs you are using at the time, especially with the Shift+Space causing some conflicts. So there's some important considerations with Leaves and Gust offensively, the main one being that it cancels super quick into Flow Intimidation, 6-second cooldown, and you can also cancel out of that basically instant float in a number of ways, using Shift+Space to get legendary beast power, using your other awakening iframe, or just using Q block. One other thing that you should definitely know about, other than reminding you that you can simply cancel the linger of those side-to-side iframes with yet another iframe in forward evasion. You can also cancel it with Gaoler from Hotbar. There's also a method of getting as quickly as possible into your pre-awakening Shift+Space, which is to use Trample. Trample swap is basically getting Trample to come out, okay, which is holding spacebar, which for some reason, just before the ending linger, does Trample out of these side-to-sides, and that is going to allow you to actually go in the reverse order, hold down space because that is the input in pre-awakening for Trample, and then press shift in order to get, without the jumping animation, your Shift+Space. We're going into now what I think is essential to bind, and I'm going to demo that skill. Moonlight Strike is a primary movement skill. To use this from pre-awakening, you bind this to a hotkey. Alright, that's why it's on a hotkey. There are some cases where you do not want to use the hotkey input, like if you're dismounting somebody using the BSR skill, you're going to press forward F from Awakening and hold RMB, and that is going to give you the BSR version. From hotkey, this does not work. Even in Awakening, it's often preferable just for convenience to use the hotkey instead of using the forward F input. Okay, so that's Moonlight Strike. Also essential are Soaring Strike for the damage, because you very rarely want to use the flow after Allround Spinner. Allround Spinner is a low priority skill unless you're using the ultimate, and the flow doesn't work after the ult anyway. So the flow is a separate skill you want to use on its own. It's a very good combo skill. It has your tier 3 add-ons. You're going to bind this to a key, probably on your mouse, but anywhere you want, and use it from Hotbar. Flow Intimidation, this is what you're going to use to follow up off of a catch in pre-awakening. So if you get a scratch catch, for example, great. Now I can go right into my big awakening damage using my from Hotbar weapon swap of Flow Intimidation, which also applies the skill add-ons of Beast Rampage and also applies this minus 10 DP debuff. So as soon as you catch somebody with a scratch from pre-awakening, one of the best things to do to try and kill them right there and then is Flow Intimidation from Hotbar into Celestial Slam for the air attacks, into Beast Rampage. You get the max DP down, You get 20% crit, which helps both your 50% crit Celestial Slam and Beast Rampage. This is your highest damage you can do to somebody in PvP, is going Celestial Slam into Beast Rampage. And one of the big reasons for that is that holding LMB after Celestial Slam does your third auto attack. The third auto attack gives you plus 15% accuracy on everything for 10 seconds, and you can get it in two ways. You can either do Full Moon into LMB, or you can do Celestial Slam into LMB, and both of those skills flow smoothly into Beast Rampage, which is your highest PvP DPS. Alright, let's go further into the quick slots. Party buff. Absolutely need to hotkey that. That is a huge damage spike for yourself with the 60% crit rate. The 60% crit rate primarily benefits your ultimate skill. The 60% goes all into the damage of this because it has no PvP crit at all, and it also changes some skill priorities. For example, Resonance. It's mostly protection unless you're Absorb buff. This power spike is huge for you, and for 30 seconds it's also huge for your allies. Berserk. This is your class buff, much smaller power spike. In fact, I would argue that this DP buff is useless because you get it for free doing Soaring Strike and they overwrite. And Q block also gives you the plus 20. So this doesn't matter if you're playing well. Movement speed plus 15% is the reason you use this, and that is why you want to time this out so that it is separate from this power spike, okay? Because this already has the 20% movement speed, which clobbers this. They don't stack. So the only real benefit you're getting from stacking your class buff with your party buff is the 30% resist, assuming that you're using the other skills that are going to give you that plus 20 DP buff. Okay, so moving on from that, we've got Breath Spike. Breath Spike is probably the best bomb to take in slot 3. Lightning Burn is not useless. It is SA trade damage, which, as I mentioned with the Resonance priority change, when you are party buffed and you get that extra crit, Resonance is the best in slot here. Horror Slam, the down smash, you get down smash from other things. It's unprotected. It doesn't even do as much damage as Resonance, so it's bad. And Jolt Stab is a combo tool. You're making a decision between a combo tool and a slow, unprotected at wind up knockdown that is very hard to make use of. There is just something about the timing of the skill that makes it very difficult to land this knock. This knock is extremely fast. This knock happens right away, and you can cancel out of it right away. So that is pretty quick. We got Rylock here. Breath Spike, I prefer it here. However, Lightning Burn is not useless. It is SA trade damage, and it moves you a little bit. Moving on from Breath Spike, Skyreach, definitely a must. Summon Heilang. I have it bound to this key on my keyboard. You hit this when he expires after an hour, and you hit this after you die to resummon him. Allround Spinner. The reason you have this is in case you need to use Allround Spinner when you have 100% BSR. So if you press that on the hotbar, then 100% BSR will not be used. If you use the Shift RMB input, you will use your 100% BSR accidentally if you did not lock BSR. Echo Pierce. This is an instant cancel from pre-awaken to awakening. That's mainly why it's here. There are details associated with that. It has use in the middle of a combo as a stiff as they get up just before your second CC. So Absolute Trample. This is also a weapon swap, exactly the opposite of Echo Pierce. Absolute Trample will swap you into pre-awakening. So if you are in pre-awakening, you will hit Echo Pierce, and then you can Shift+Space for your legendary beast power. If you are in awakening, you can hit Trample, Shift+Space for your legendary beast power. Gaoler. Big Tamer skill. You hit the hotkey, you get the iframe, even if you're in awakening. If you're using it from hotbar, you're using the iframe, and you do that from both stances. If you're using the F input, you're trying to use a cancel for the damage. Tons of the skills in your pre-awakening kit that you might actually want to use in the awakening kit, you can instantly cancel them afterwards by pressing F into the damage part of Dark Gaoler, and Dark Gaoler slaps. Okay, not only does it slap, it has massive range to the front. This is your furthest reaching skill. If you do your ultimate, it will not kill mobs at the same range that Dark Gaoler will. Dark Gaoler will kill an entire pack like right up to this guy, including the mobs at the edge, and your ultimate will stop like somewhere here. So this is your furthest touch that you have, and it is kind of a touch of death. You can totally finish people off with just this damage. It's also a down smash roll, Beast Rampage. This one is actually optional. The forward guard doesn't turn with your camera, and this is your highest DPS skill in Awakening. It's also one of the best cores you can use, so you can take the core and it's a multi-hit bound. If you try mouse moving the skill, you'll see that it doesn't go all the way. And that's a big problem because all the way has that last hit with down smash. So as I mouse move it, I can tap the hotkey and you see the last hit goes through. Roaring. The Halang Followup does sometimes catch a stiff, and maybe you want to drop that somewhere if you feel safe, but it's an unprotected skill. And so if you're using it, you're trying to tag them with this movement speed debuff and cancel out of it right away. Moving on, we got Howling. Similar to Roaring, it's an unprotected way to drop a Dog Trap, something that has a large AoE down attack and does okay damage in PvP. Roaring has the same feature. It's a large AoE down attack. It does okay damage in PvP, and that final float, you could imagine a situation where you need to float like a bunch of people in a circle, or you're stuck on some terrain like a wall in Node Wars and Siege, and they're over there, and you can actually hit them with the edge of that. Okay, so I've got GM Blackstar here helping me demonstrate how protections work in the game. As you can see, if I'm blocking his attacks from the front, I have this block gauge that will recover when I'm not blocking, and will instantly stop recovering if I use a skill that has a forward guard effect associated with it. This is my indicator that the effect is active. If I get hit behind this effect, anywhere behind this perfect line created by the staff, basically from the head backwards, I'm going to get CC. So rotating this effect to face the enemy is the way that you make sure that you are still protected while in forward guard. And if you're afraid of your back being taken, if you're afraid of projectiles landing behind you and then CCing you from the back, Strikers and Mystics have a skill called Spiral Cannon that goes through the forward guard, and then when they get behind you, it CCs you. Or you can do that actually with your Scratch out of either Tree Climb, right, or Forward Evasion. Oh, that's an SA. So SA, you gotta grab it. Grab is really fast on Tamer, and it's primarily the way that you're going to catch people. If you just do nothing but optimize for landing your grab a high percentage of the time that you try it, you're going to be a good Tamer. That's pretty much the thing to do. As you can see there, I just got gripped by the hash, but my grab is much faster than his. So you want to exploit the fact that you've got that fast grab off Tamer that can activate out of any of your movement skills. Save your iframes for when you truly think you're in danger of being grabbed or CC'd yourself. And the rest of the time, try and exploit super armor, movement to recover that forward block, and iframes to recover that forward block until you're safe to use it again. See right there, he's going to grab me through it. So I mentioned we're also known not just as the cancel class, but also a class with probably the best grab in the game. I mean, it's up there. And definitely after recent buffs, the best iframes in the game or close to it. When you add those two things together, we have a lightning fast grab out of any of our movement skills, including our iframes. And we can cancel any offensive or defensive skill at any time into a movement skill, into a grab.
Oh my god.
I'm just...
Grab choice?
Gosh. Really?
Going for knock? I knocked him. He's knocked, he can die. Nice.
Oh! Like I V2.
Okay, I have my Tamer buff and I have an ult ready. I'm okay, I'm okay. Grab the Usa.
Yeah, I'm gone. I'm dead, I'm
Ulting.
dead. Holy shit, dude, just damage. 1 second.
Hey!
Oh my god.
I've prepared here a set of add-ons that are going to favor a specific grab combo I've been using in AOS. It's a flexible structure to the combo that allows you to go a bit more protected with a bit less damage, or a bit less protected with like as much damage and as many little knick-knack, DP down, AP up buffs as you can possibly get. So these 5 add-ons here, everything below Fearful Trampling, are all for this one combo. And there's actually nothing wrong with setting up your add-ons that way, because on Tamer, your most powerful thing is grab. You can use your grab out of any of the movement skills we just went over. So that makes you extremely dangerous as long as you're within range of dashing up to somebody and hitting that E key. So there is nothing wrong with determining what your most effective offensive play is and using literally all your add-ons just to min-max your ability to make good on that kill when you land that grab. All right, for example. So this is one set of add-ons. If you want other add-on ideas, you can actually just go to War, Arena of Solaire, and then go and check all the Tamers who aren't me, because I'm a fucking shitter that can't actually make top 10, even with only 15 Tamers in existence, and check out some of the add-ons that some of these guys are using. You'll notice a lot of similarities, like for example the Beast Rampage add-on. Everybody takes this because the Flow Intimidation applies these add-ons as well, and then that buffs your Celestial Slam into the Beast Rampage. Or if you just use the Beast Rampage raw or with the core for the bound catch, these are just the most useful things to have because the crit rate buffs this 50% crit in PvP, and you want of course DP down and as much damage as possible coming out of your highest DPS PvP skill. But you can definitely just browse this, and after some time on the class, you'll kind of just look at it and be like, oh, that's interesting, that's what they're doing there. And they're all good ideas, so there's a lot of ways to set up your add-ons on Tamer. I would definitely just focus on doing whatever maximizes your ability to execute your game plan, and trying to pull as many add-ons into that as you need, and then using the rest for utility. Okay, so we're going to try and demonstrate a slightly safer version of this combo. Which is going to be to use Tiger as the restiff as they get up, and to not even go for the Garuda. The Garuda is kind of the key to all that extra damage, and you get an extra like 700, 800 damage out of that minus 20 magic DP.
Grab choice.
Really?
Going for knock. I knocked him. He's knocked. He can die. Nice.
Slowly moving out of sight. We've been lost, calling it a night. If only you could see me.
So GM Blackstar just happened to be in here checking out some classes, Hash and Sage, while I was recording, so hopefully we can get a couple of these concepts dialed in. I'm sitting here at some reduced AP, and I'm going to try and use the one-shot AOS combo that I was showing you guys before when I get an opening for a grab. So with Sage, typically you want to wait for a TP SA Linger. Oh, we didn't get him. We were so close. 212 just not quite enough. Okay, so we're going to see if we can live first of all, and then after we do that, we're going to go up in AP just a little bit for the next round. Got him. Okay. Ooh, we actually got the down smash there, which is surprising. Okay, so we'll go up in AP just a little bit here. And you'll see how that killed him even at reduced AP. So the whole idea with that combo is that that second part of the burst has chances for down smash, and it also is going to hit them when you're basically fully AP buff. The only thing I didn't do there is get the plus 16 from Gust. So as you can see, even at reduced AP, that combo absolutely slaps. And Tamer is very good at just evading even with a sliver of health until the opportune moment to dash in, do the grab combo. Okay, so now we're going to demonstrate on this resisting all the time suck valk a more typical to grab combo, which instead of relying on Garuda for magic DP down, flash into pull thrust into stance shift into Dark Gaoler damage cancel. We're then going to go back into Awakening with a Moonlight Strike from hotbar, and then a Shift+Q skill for the knockdown, backup CC via Flow Intimidation right after that, Celestial Slam Air Attack, Beast Rampage for the finishing damage. Let's give this a try. Okay, so let's go over all of the traps. The traps are a lower percentage than they were, but as you can see, they will still catch people. And you can definitely follow up off those catches, but it just requires a bit more attention because you can't rely on every hit of the trap CCing them. Some hits are just going to whiff. It's a low percentage chance until the last hit of the trap. So when the doggo disappears from his animation, he's no longer got any chance to stiffen them, but that last hit of the animation has the highest chance to stiffen. So just because they're a protected trigger, you're definitely going to want to use the Surging Tide and the Void Lightning traps a lot more than you use any of the other ones. However, there is Roaring, and there also is Howling. So as you can see, if you catch that stiff somewhere in the middle of the animation, it's just a little bit harder to follow up on because you got to notice at the right time, and there is quite a bit of hit stutter and effects that are happening. The last hit is a much more reliable, but of course the chances of them walking through it just as the last hit is happening are a lot lower. So while grab is going to make up most of your catches, and it's definitely the tool to focus on at first, there are certainly a number of other catches that are high priority to attempt on Tamer, and I'm going to start with the protected ones, and then we're going to get into the unprotected ones. Okay, so next in line after grab, you have Pre-Awakening Scratch, which, as we've demonstrated multiple times, you can use in multiple different ways, and just using it on the ground, like so, is often a good way as well to move a little bit into a new position and try and roll for that stiffness. So Scratch is kind of our number 2 catch because it is a protected option, and it's also movement, and it also can be canceled into instantly out of a number of options. But very close or tied for second is going to be whichever core you decide to take, and it's just going to have slightly different features. The only stiffness catch core that you can take, Super Armor Core, is Moonlight Strike, and this would be, I would say, a better catch in the sense that it moves you much further from where you are. It's going to be much more surprising. However, it's not as flexible as Scratch is. It doesn't have as much utility. It is on a faster cooldown if you take that Moonlight Strike core, and it's kind of the preferred 1v1 core because you don't really need, if you're not doing group PvP, the protection of Beast Rampage Bound. You don't really need, if you're not doing group PvP, the protection of Legendary Beast Dance, although it is kind of the easiest thing to sit in every 4 seconds with lots of protection, and has all of that grab combo utility that we went over before. But I would say that Core Moonlight Strike just provides you something you don't really have other than via tree climb into scratch cancel, which is a way to dash and stiffen the opponent. So instead of burning your grab cooldown every 4 seconds, you're just trying to dash in protected and look for that stiffness, and if you catch it, hey, great, I can go right into my knockdown combo from there and even re-knock them before they get up. So Moonlight Strike core is not as often used in group PvP, but it's a very powerful stiffness, and I think the main reason it's less used than the other cores is actually because there's something funky about that SA, and sometimes the stiffness just doesn't seem to apply. It looks like you should have been able to stiff a person because they were unprotected just walking, and it just didn't work. So the two aspects to it that I think keep Tamers from relying on this in group PvP is that sometimes you hit them and your SA doesn't seem to work, and you just get CC'd for no reason, or you hit them and the stiffness doesn't seem to work. So similar to the traps, there is just a little bit of RNG associated with it, but that doesn't mean it's bad. So as I said, knock right into re-knock, and that's going to give you like an extra second or two of CC damage while they're on the ground. And that's very, very valuable. So it's definitely worth it to know that this is a pretty damn good core, and you might want to think about experimenting with it. But I would say the one that's going to land you the most catches out of anything in group PvP is going to be Core Beast Rampage, and it just has this excellent feature to it that it's also your highest DPS that you can do right away if you catch them with the bound. So you're doing as much damage as you can do with a single skill with no setup, and you're rolling for that catch, and all of those swings downward have the stiff associated with them. You'll see there, the bound associated with them. You'll see that I bound him first, and then as I kind of move forward a touch and hit this guy with follow-up attacks, it bound him as well. I also showed you earlier the trick for getting it to be mouse movable, and by tapping the hotkey from your hotbar as the last hit's about to go through so that you get that last hit as well. So this is just a very, very strong option that's going to land you more catches, and having that flow out of Moonlight Strike into it makes it almost as good, frankly, as the Moonlight Strike stiffness core. It's just that it's actually probably more likely to land some of the time, and it gives you protection towards the end of Moonlight Strike, whereas if you just hit somebody with it during that hit acceleration, that tends to be where you'll get CC'd. So you might be thinking, wait a second, why did we just go over those two cores and not the core we've been using this entire time, Legendary Beast Dance? Well, that's because this is all about catches, and I do think, in all honesty, Core Moonlight Strike and Core Beast Rampage and even Scratch are better catches than Core Legendary Beast Dance. However, I still think Core Legendary Beast Dance is the best general purpose option. And the reason I say that is basically because all catches are inferior to your grab, and Core Legendary Beast Dance seems to provide the best versatility, not only with your own grab combo, but for assisting other people with some SA protected down attack damage in their combo by using Flow Full Moon after Legendary Beast Dance into Beast Rampage, especially when Beast Rampage is not going to screw up the CC counter by adding a bound to it. So, because you have these standing CCs that provide down attack damage that doesn't increment the counter, into more SA down attack damage that doesn't increment the counter, although it does have the down smash, which might screw some things up. Actually, the down smash can be a good thing and extend the CC. And then you go into Beast Rampage, you get your Flow Full Moon, holding LMB into Beast Rampage, giving you the 15% auto attack. So this gives you an option that you do not have if you don't take the SA for this. And it also has SA movement speed minus 30. So just for using it, you give them this debuff 5 seconds. This is a 4-second cooldown skill. So just running around, linking this skill into movement, waiting for it to be off cooldown to try the catch again is incredibly safe. You can cancel out of it right away. You can use multiple versions of it. You can pick the version that's going to give you the Shift+Q skill that you want, because this has 4 different states and it's linked to this. So depending on the input you use, you get a different skill effect pressing Shift+Q, depending on which dance you used. All right, and that altogether just gives you a whole lot of paths to an advantage. And that's how I feel about this skill. I think it is the best option, especially if you are a beginner, because that SA catch is free. You can just keep trying it over and over again, back off for another 4 seconds, go back in, try it again, even though it is a lower percentage catch than the other two top core options. Core Garuda is a viable core, I'll just mention quickly. However, it's on a longer cooldown, and it gives you something you already kind of have if you take the Core Beast Rampage core. It only really does damage when you are Heilang Absorb buff because it doesn't have PvP crit. So it's really, really niche. It's really just that Garuda has slightly more range to it than your other catches. So there is a scenario where there's multiple targets and it's going to float them all with a protected forward guard, whereas Beast Rampage is not going to bound them all. However, you know, that's so niche and really you're just using it for the memes. I would say that is tier 3 if these are tier 1, and then this is tier -10. It is garbage. This is tier 0. Okay, so, or actually I guess that would make it higher on this list. This is tier 25, the last letter in the alphabet. Moving on from that, let me show you how to use Core Legendary Beast Dance as a catch, since we're talking about catches. But the reason I take it is I'm sacrificing the catch potential of Core Moonlight Strike and Core Beast Rampage being better in order to have combo versatility, a catch that I can use more safely and just loop on repeat, and has these other advantages to it that are tangential rather than just benefiting the catch itself. Okay, so, but as a catch, probably the best option is Vermilion, and the reason for that is because it's a 360-degree float, and there's 2 floats on it at the start of the skill and at the end of the skill there. Float, float. Okay, so sometimes people are not ready for that second float, and the first float comes out the fastest out of any of the catches you can use with the skill. It's basically the same as Tiger. However, Tiger has a much smaller range and it doesn't float behind you. I will mention that the largest AoE is the bound, so holding down and RMB is the largest CC attempt that you can have, and probably the best one to use out of this iframe because it cancels your side-to-side evasion basically in the middle, similar to the skills that cancel the top of the pre-awakened evasion. So you do have an awakened evasion iframe into SA that will happen if your leaves and your gust are both on cooldown, and the thing that cancels that the fastest into something useful is actually Turtle. Alright, so moving on from that, why would you ever use Dragon? Because the SA is the longest. That's really the big reason to do that. And in addition to that, you may also want to make use of the fact that the longest reach of a Shift+Q skill that you have is the Dragon version. It also comes out the fastest, and it flows extremely fast, if not instantly, out of Flow Intimidation after Beast Rampage. So that's an extra way to just top up your damage, and especially at full gear for a long time when I was running Beast Rampage core, just having Dragon up and flowing into Flow Intimidation Dragon would be enough damage to finish people most of the time. So there is a use for more than just Tiger, but Tiger is definitely the most useful Shift+Q skill for that knock. The knock itself is quite quick if you want to risk it, but you really should be thinking of it more as a re-CC, and as a re-CC, especially if you use Flow Intimidation from Hotbar as a backup re-CC that will float them in case the knockdown resists, it's just incredibly strong. Alright, so if your grab is your best catch, Scratch, Core Moonlight Strike, Core Beast Rampage, or Core Legendary Beast Dance are your next tier, then I think after that we've got to go with Flow Intimidation, just because it is so fast that I consider the risk of any of those protected catches to be somewhat similar. You can whiff a grab, which is an unprotected animation. You can get grabbed out of this pretty telegraphed SA. As I mentioned, there's a hit excel issue with this, and sometimes the stiff also does not work. And Beast Rampage, you can easily get punished because it has no camera turn until that last hit flips, and if you want that smooth camera turn, you got to do the super awkward hotbar trick that I showed you before. So really, the unprotected frames of this extremely fast float are not that much of a risk, and if you cancel it with Q block, you actually have time to decide whether you're going to go into a combo and still get the air attacks out of Celestial Slam. So it is that fast, and I would consider it actually close to a tier 2 catch for that reason. It's just that it's a bit more of an advanced tool in that way. But if you just remain aware and practice that getting behind somebody with flow intimidation after your awakening iframes, I think it is probably just as good, and at higher levels even I'd say it's better than most of the catches we just put on tier 2 because they're protected. Okay, so I would mention that and then go from there into the tier 3 catches, which are going to be any of your traps just because they're low percentage, but they're so easy to apply on the run and you have so many of them that I do think that it's worth saying they're on the same tier as some of these slower protected ones like Fearful Trembling, although this has a huge advantage of giving you this attack speed and movement speed if that's what you've got spec'd. So a lot of people look at that as a way to re-up their tier 3 add-ons while they're in a fight with an SA Linger that recovers stamina. Probably isn't going to stun them, but if it does, you're up big, and if it doesn't, at least you get your tier 3 add-ons helping you with some utility so that you can run around and apply your higher percentage catches. The other way that you should know about it where it's useful as a prediction catch is anytime during Void Lightning, you can use Shift+Q. So at any time you think you're going to catch somebody in a skill transition or going unprotected while you're kind of right beside, let's say, some allies or something, debuffing people with this attack and cast speed slow, you can hit Shift+Q and go for the stun on them. And that does work out sometimes. So I would put that as a tier 3 catch along with your traps. And I would also mention Surging Tide, although we do use it more defensively on the run. As I mentioned, it's got probably the best trap to use associated with it. And in addition to that defensive utility, it does have that knockback, and you do catch people with that knockback sometimes. Alright, so last thing to mention, tier 3.5 is using your Shift+Q. And I would not use the Verm version, I would use the Tiger version if at all possible, but all of the versions except Dragon have a CC. Dragon does not, but it does have a debuff and it comes out the fastest, etc., etc. We went over it. So Tiger is by far the best, and similar to Flow Intimidation, you can use one of the Awakening iframes into Tiger into Q block. It just comes out slower. So it's a lower percentage, but it is doable as a behind the back catch, especially if you know other classes and you know what you're doing. And I would put that on the same tier as using Breath Spike from Hotbar in a similar fashion. Alright, so something we have to talk about is, of course, the ult. So the big thing to know with this is you really want to have your 20% crit add-on. You really want to have your Absorb Heilang buff up, which will not work if you don't have the dog summoned. So that is something that when you get stressed out, you go, okay, I'm buffing us with Tamer party buff, and your dog isn't summoned, or at least my dog isn't summoned because I'm an idiot, and we don't get the buff, and my ultimate skill does a lot less damage, and my party does not do all the damage that they were expecting to do. So having those two up, your add-on and your 60%, together with your level 5 crit here, which is about 20% crit, just under 20% crit, I believe. That's basically 100% crit for you. The other number one thing to be aware of is maximizing the CC window. And the thing is, it actually catches them in a stiff. It's a multi-hit stiff, so like all of these crazy numbers of hits here, 12 and 13, I think just 12 maybe, have a chance to stiff. And then on that extra attack, 1800 times 13, it's a knockdown. It doesn't cap them. So in fact, you get a stiff into a knockdown with room for one more knockdown. And that makes it incredibly powerful as a combo tool, especially in AOS, where you really do need full combos to kill people. Well, that does it for the Awakening Tamer PvP guide. Thank you so much for listening, and I really appreciate you guys. I'm going to leave you with 2 links here. First is to the homie Poncho Bandit, who did the best guide period ever period for Tamer, and probably in all of BDO that I've ever seen at least. Has some great thoughts in there that are still relevant today in terms of how to think about playing your Tamer in a more meta way, in a more matchup oriented, game mode oriented way, and some little details in there that I think are nuggets of gold. You should totally go check out that guide, even though it's a bit outdated mechanically. It is absolutely not outdated in terms of its thinking. So also on that topic, we've got Memo's Class Masters series interview on Quendia's channel. Quendia has some great resources all over his channel for if you're just getting started, how to understand basic concepts. He's basically got a video on every single thing you could possibly ask as a question as a beginner. So head over there, check that out. Memo gave a great interview just talking about how Tamer stacks up in the game overall, and that is the rank 1 AOS Tamer both seasons running. I mean, he was in the top 5 players overall for quite a while there, even in season 1. So you got to give it to Memo, and he is telling you straight up what he thinks about the class. That's the place to go to get a more meta picture. I would say most of those thoughts still seem relevant. If anything, we are better off than we were at the time that that interview was recorded.